Yeah, we're recording. This will appear on YouTube after our call. You can find past recordings on our YouTube at youtube.com/@Arachne_digital. Today, our presentation is on hacked elections, and we will have Cade presenting. So we're going to cover some quick intros and icebreakers, the presentations, time for Q&A, and then some announcements. There's a lot to cover, so if you have any questions, drop them in the chat during, and then we'll do our best to answer them during the time we have together. So who are we? Kate and I represent Arachne Digital. We'll share a little bit more about ourselves here in a minute. We're a global cybersecurity startup that focuses on open source tools and access to our threat intelligence database. You can learn more at arachne.digital. And I'm Vic. I use they, them pronouns. I'm the community manager. So if you join our Slack, you'll see me posting a lot. Outside of this, I really like poetry and art, and sometimes you'll see my black cat kind of roaming around, mostly asking for food. All right, Cade, would you like to present yourself?
Just quickly, so I'm Cade, so I'm one of the co-founders for Arachne Digital. I guess we're going to get into one of my real big passions with this talk as far as the intersection of geopolitics and cybersecurity.
And we don't have Janine today, but usually she's here. You'll see her in our Slack as well. She's the other co-founder and our tech lead. All right. If you have been with us previously, our last event is on YouTube, or if you haven't been with us at all and you want to see what we've been talking about, we went over Maintainer Month, which was really highlighted by GitHub, and we had somebody from the New Zealand public sector and Microsoft, along with Cade and Janine, speaking more about how do we maintain open source, how do we support maintainers, and what does this look like to continue sustainably. So that's going to be on our YouTube. And as we get started, one word in the chat, or maybe a phrase, 3 words, however you feel, honestly. How do you currently feel about the security of elections? This could be where you're at, even though right now we're going over US and Russia kind of stuff. But yeah, if you want to drop in the chat how you feel. Okay, we got a black hole. Yeah, I see that. I feel very skeptical. That's going to be my word. Skeptical about security. I'll use 3. Let's see, Mauricio, I'm kind of interested for you as somebody in Canada. And welcome, Serhi. Good to see you again.
I'm not used to this app. I have a hard time finding what is the chat. Like, I don't know. I usually use the Zoom,
Oh, okay, valid. No worries then. Thanks for joining us and learning a new technology. All right, so yeah, black hole skeptical, these words, yeah, what we have right here, it seems like we're all a little bit unsure. We'll cover maybe where some of that uncertainty comes from in the presentation. But if you learn anything or want to connect further with us as we move forward, you can find us on LinkedIn at Arachne Digital, and we're also on Blue Sky. And as we continue the conversation and keep up these events, we also encourage you to leave us feedback. We have a chat form. We do read and review what you write, and I'll share this again at the end and in a follow-up email. So I'm going to go ahead and let Cade take it away with our presentation. And yeah, it should be really interesting.
Okay. Bear with me. I'll get my slides sorted. Okay, hopefully that is now coming through nicely for everyone. Okay, so I originally gave this talk, so it's called Bytes to Bias, so the GRU's convergence of hacking and disinformation. I guess a couple of disclaimers. There's a lot of content. These slides are deliberately designed to be a bit wordy, so they are made so that you can read them after the fact. I'm not going to go through sort of every slide and every bits and piece, but you can pause it, read it. If you want, we can also send the slides around if you would like. Also, the slides have been reformatted just to make them a little bit more nicer for this presentation. So forgive me if I have to sort of pause and orientate myself, because these are not the slides that I presented to last time, but this is all the same content. Okay, so we're going to be covering the 2016 US presidential election. Now, I know that seems like it was a very long time ago, but I do think that it is very, very important. So what we're going to be going through, we're going to look at some context regarding the United States. We're going to look at some context regarding Russia, just to give us some orientation before we get into the content. We're going to be looking at the timeline of this particular indictment. So the United States v. Viktor Basarovich Natiksho et al. That's going to be sort of the bulk of what we're going to look at. And then I basically want to do some meaning making and look at what does all this mean as far as hacking? What does all this mean regarding disinformation? I know we had a question before the presentation as far as how do we make elections secure? It's a very big topic. I'm going to try to cover some various things and help give us a little bit of a path forward through all of this. Okay, so some context regarding the United States and what we're going to be digging into. The 2016 US presidential elections, this was between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. The election is held on November 8th, which is sort of the date to hold in mind as we sort of go through some events. You'll see it all sort of ticks down to November. And this election was marked by a number of scandals. So just 3 of them, there were lots. But so Clinton's private email server was used while she was Secretary of State. So that was considered to be quite a big no-no as far as having classified information going through a personal system. We also had Trump's Access Hollywood tape, where he made very ugly and disgusting comments about how he treated women. And we then had the actual hacking of both the DNC and the DCCC that we're going to get into. So in this election, Trump loses the popular vote, but he secures the electoral college vote just because of the way that the elections work in the United States, and he becomes the 45th president of the United States. Trump's presidency is dogged by rumors of Russian collusion, and I last gave this presentation before Trump was re-elected, so Trump is now elected again as the US president. Okay, so why is this election, the 2016 election, it was quite some time ago, why is it important? So there's so many reasons. When we initially did the slide, the reasons didn't all fit. There's like a bunch that we've kind of left off, but I guess sort of some of the key takeaways. So Clinton was set to be the first female president that the United States was going to have. So that was quite a milestone that never eventuated with Clinton. We had Trump, a businessman with no prior political or military experience, secured the Republican nomination, and it kind of redefined the norms as far as who can run for presidents. Normally, you would have thought that, given a lot of Trump's history, that it would have ruled him out as a candidate, but in this case, it didn't. We had Bernie Sanders, who was a self-described democratic socialist, gaining quite a substantial support. So there's a time where you could not have imagined that someone openly calling themselves a socialist would have polled well in a US election, but they did. This is also where we see the rise of fake news. So that's where we see that phrase fake news sort of really start to gain legs, and we really start to see disinformation around a lot of this. Trump gets to appoint 3 justices to the US Supreme Court. I think there may have even been more submitted like since I've given this presentation, and it looks like he's going to be able to appoint at least 1 more before his current term is up. And it's led to a significant change in US policy under at least his first presidency and definitely his second presidency, both like domestically. So we had like tax reform, deregulation, but also internationally as far as the withdrawal from the Paris Climate Agreement, and a bunch of other things that didn't even fit on the slide. We've now seen with the next like iteration of Trump, again, we've seen massive stuff around like both like domestic and international policy around like tariffs, the intervention in Iran, and quite a few other things that have been going on. Okay, so we're going to go through a whole lot of information, and it's going to be at points quite granular, as far as on this date, this person did this thing on this machine. And it's like, how do we have this information that is like so very, very finely detailed? So I'm pulling all this information from just one document. So this is coming from this particular indictment. So this is... there's quite a few defendants listed. So this is basically the United States of America v. Viktor Basorovich Netivsho, and quite a few other defendants. So basically, this is one of the multiple documents that was put out while there was an investigation into was there any collusion between the Trump presidency and the Russian government. So Robert Mueller, so he was initially the head of the FBI. He was later appointed as a special counsel to investigate was there collusion between the Trump candidacy, the like Trump campaign at that time, and the Russian government. And this is just sort of just one document. So there's lots of other stuff that's in the public domain, and this is quite a lot of info, and we're just getting it from just this one particular source. Now, just because we'd love to have acronyms, there's a whole lot of acronyms that you're going to hear. And also due to the nature of the court documents, they obscure certain things as far as individual names and company names. So this is what we know. So the DNC, which you're going to hear quite a lot, that is the Democratic National Committee. The DCCC that you're also going to hear quite a lot, that is the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. Sorry, that point has gone over to bullet points, but it's a Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. We have Company 1, and that is, which we now have confirmation that is CrowdStrike. There is Organization 1, and we have confirmation that that is WikiLeaks. We have SBOE1, so State Board of Election 1. So again, sort of gone over multiple bullet points. Sorry for the mistake there. So this is believed to be the Illinois State Board of Elections. And then we have Vendor 1. So this is believed to be VR Systems. So they are a company that provides election management software out to a couple of different states. Okay, now to go into some context around Russia. So we're going to be looking at the people charged in this particular indictment. So there are 12 GRU officers. They come from 2 units within the GRU. So Unit 26165 and Unit 74455. I am going to use those numbers throughout the presentation, but you should have some visual cues as to who we are talking about. So colloquially, those 2 groups, they are known as Fancy Bear and Sandworm. They go by a whole lot of other names, but I'm using Fancy Bear and Sandworm just to sort of stick to the animal nomenclature, just to give us sort of something to anchor to. So whenever I'm talking about Unit 26165, you should see a bear on the slides. And whenever I'm talking about 74455, you should see a worm of some description on the slides. I'll try to make it clear sort of as we go. There's also a bit of a distinction as far as like talking about these units. Are we talking about the entirety of Fancy Bear? Is Fancy Bear wider than just these 2 units, or wider than just sort of these 2 departments within the 1 unit? And the GRU making up sort of 2 separate units, and there's also multiple units that are within the GRU. So I'm going to use the unit numbers just because that is a little bit clearer, but we are sort of talking about these groups, Fancy Bear and Sandworm. Just quickly, some history on the GRU. So this is the Foreign Military Intelligence Agency of the Russian Armed Forces. It was established in 1918 and was originally focused on protecting the Bolshevik regime. So that was its remit initially. So later became sort of the main directorate of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of the Russian Federation, and it was expanded to look at foreign intelligence, human assets, propaganda, and sabotage operations. They have a very wide remit. They do a lot of things. They are known for aggressive operations and rivalries with other Soviet agencies, which we will sort of get into why that is. Not that rivalries are unique to this unit. It's quite well known that a lot of the Russian agencies will compete for face time with the boss, being Putin. So they became sort of the main intelligence directorate in 1942, and they played a significant role in World War II and Cold War espionage and then modern conflicts, which we'll get into. One of their big claims to fame was successful penetration of Britain's atomic bomb project during the Cold War. It's worth noting, so I've got this particular photo here. So this is the flag being raised over the Reichstag in Germany during the end of World War II. It's worth noting that Russia used to be an ally of the West. I don't know that we could ever call the GRU a friendly intelligence agency, but Russia was an ally, and this was like us fighting alongside Russia, and this was them taking the Reichstag in Germany. These were our allies during World War II. So our allies and in their post-Soviet era and how things have turned out. So after the Soviet Union dissolved, there was quite a lot of reshuffling, but this particular units of the GRU, so they've retained a lot of their independence, which didn't happen for some of the other agencies. So in modern conflicts, so they have been known to be offering bounties to Taliban-linked fighters to attack US and other international forces in Afghanistan, so literally paying for terrorist attacks. In 2014, we have an arms depot explosion in the Czech Republic, and we have the Russian occupation of Crimea, which they took part in. In 2015, we have the Ukrainian blackout. So this is the first blackout that was caused by the group we know as Sandworm. 2016, we have interference in the US presidential campaign, which is what we're going to get into the bulk of today. An attempted coup in Montenegro, hacking the World Anti-Doping Agency, and the second Ukrainian blackout. In 2017, we have NotPetya, which is malware that sort of causes havoc across the world. In 2018, we have the Salisbury nerve agent attack on a former GRU officer living in Britain and his daughter, an attempted hack on the Organization for Prohibited Chemical Weapons. There's lots and lots of stuff that these like different units have been involved in, and I think it's quite stark to have the contrast between our allies during World War II to literally paying terrorists to attack US and other international forces in Afghanistan. They are like quite far from what we had considered to be allies nowadays. And we have these two photos here. So we have Anatoly Chapega and we have Alexander Mishkin, who were involved in the Salisbury nerve agent attack. Now, the GRU organizational identity and culture. So they have a dual role of intelligence collection and military operations. They have Spetsnaz in their ranks, and it's believed that this has led to a culture of risk-taking and aggression because they have special forces among their makeup, which makes them quite different to some of the other agencies within Russia. And they definitely sort of see this as an asset to themselves as far as being able to showcase their value to Russian leadership. It is often like a competition to see who can get the most time with Putin. So who can do the boldest, the most daring, and get the most like out of their operations. That is sort of like who is able to basically have that face time. So engaging in cyber operations, disinformation campaigns, and traditional espionage, they sort of run the gamut. They focus on internal talent for their cyber operations, which is a contrast with the FSB's approach, where they will often work with cyber criminals and get them to do a lot of their cyber work for them. And here, so we have sort of the headquarters of the GRU with Putin making a visit. Okay. Now, I'm not going to get into the ins and outs of the slides we're going to go into, but I do also show them for a few seconds so people can sort of like at least pause and read the content if you would like. These are the people that we're going to go into as far as the GRU officers that have been indicted. I think it's important that we see their faces. So I've deliberately sort of shown these just to sort of show that, hey, these are people. I feel in cybersecurity, we sort of get lost in the, oh, it's an IP address. Oh, it's a file hash. That's what we're looking at. And I think we kind of forget that we have adversaries that sit behind a keyboard and they are people. And this is literally who it is. So as far as who is charged in this particular indictment, so we have Viktor Natiksho. We have Boris Antonov. We have Dmitry Baden. We have Ivan Yermakov. We have Alexei Lukashev. We have Sergei Morgachev. We have Nikolai Kozacek. We have Pavel Yershov. We have Artem Malashev. We have Alexander Ozadchuk. We have Alexei Potemkin. We have Anatoly Kovalev. Okay, now looking at the structure for these two units. So the indictment sort of talks about these two units, but doesn't specifically name them. So I've sort of like gone through the indictment and sort of pulled out a lot of stuff and sort of added it in. So for this presentation, we're going to be basically referring to Department A and Department B of 26165. So that is Fancy Bear. Basically, Department A does a lot of the phishing, a lot of sort of the very low-level hacking, and Department B does basically the monitoring of the malware and sort of using the malware that we're going to see, which is primarily X-Agent. And then we have one department that we know of within 74455, and they kind of run the gamut. They kind of do like a few different things. This is kind of how it roughly shapes up. So we have Victor Natiksho as a head of 26165, and then we have Department A looking at hacking and phishing. We have Department B that's looking at malware development and monitoring. It's quite structured. So we basically have a team of people that are reporting into sort of a head of a department that's reporting into the overall head of the unit. We know less about 74455. So like we have Potemkin, but we don't know sort of who is reporting to him. We have Kovalev, but it doesn't sort of talk about his structure. So we don't know if he's reporting into someone, and they're all reporting up to Ozachuk as the head of 74455. Okay, so now we're going to go through a timeline of events that's outlined in this indictment. This is going to get quite granular, and I guess the reason that I want to sort of go down to this level is just give people a very strong, like thorough idea as far as what does hacking look like in this instance. We have a Hollywood idea quite often as far as like hacking, but what is it really? What does the realities of this look like day to day? And we will go through it pretty much day to day. So this starts in 2015, so quite a ways before the actual election itself. So we have 6165, so they're registering a particular domain that's going to be used for the malware. So I guess one of the realities, like you need these minute things as far as like you need domains to be using it and that kind of stuff. So they use Bitcoin, and there's a couple of Bitcoin purchases that we see later on that they're using. So again, worth understanding that they are using Bitcoin for a lot of these purchases. Okay, so 2015, still there. So between June and September, so the Dutch intelligence actually informed their US counterparts of a separate hack to the DNC, which is not the GRU. So this is what we know as APT29 or Cozy Bear. So they're attributed to the Foreign Intelligence Service of the Russian Federation, the SVR. So they are very, very much focused on stealth, being quiet, and just gathering intelligence. They are what we consider to be a very traditional intelligence agency. They are not as brash as the GRU. So they were already in the DNC network when the GRU then come in. So also worth noting that these groups don't talk to each other, or if they do, they at least do not deconflict their operations. We have one intelligence agency that's already in a target, and we have a second intelligence agency coming in as well. They don't care about what each other is doing. They get in each other's way in that sense. And so it's believed that APT29 stayed in the DNC network at least until the GRU was evicted in October of 2016. The indictment does not talk at great length about APG 29 though, so there's less sort of information about that in this presentation. So we're now into 2016, so February 1. So we're getting some orders here. So please send exactly this amount of Bitcoin to a certain Bitcoin address. And then shortly thereafter, there's a transaction that exactly fits those details that's listed on the blockchain. So they're starting to move their money around. March 14, so using those funds, so members of 74455, so they purchase a VPN account, which is later used to log into the Twitter account, Galcifer, that we're going to see later on. And there's some funds left over that they end up using later. So March 15, so the next day, so we've got Yermakov. So he's running technical queries for the DNC's internet protocol, just figuring out what's connected. And he's searching open source information about the DNC network, the Democratic Party, and Hillary Clinton. So we have these two. So we have basically both Fancy Bear and Sandworm doing stuff in parallel here, just sort of gathering some preliminary information. So March 19, so we've got Lukashev and 26165. So creating a set of spear phishing emails that are sent to the personal accounts of people that are related to the Clinton campaign, including the chairman of the Clinton campaign and the senior foreign policy advisor. So this is sort of where things really start to take off. And so we have a particular account that's sort of used for the URL shortening service. So a URL is basically used in the phishing to get you to go to a website that is controlled by the attackers, and it's used to harvest credentials. A URL shortener is used such that the URL can be changed and it can look like something other than the website that you are going to be taken to. So it's just a matter of masking it. So it takes them to a GRU controlled website, and they alter the appearance of the sender to make it look like it's come from Google. So it looks like this is a Google notification, and it gets them to change their password by clicking on the link. So Lukashev, Yermakov, and other members of 26165, so basically they're now into the chairman's email account, and at this point they have got access to 50,000 emails. So that's pretty quick. Literally, they've done some setup in February. We're now into the back end of March. They're already in they're already in now. And they've got access to 50,000 emails. So this is sort of like a large chunk of it already. So victim 3. So we'll see sort of the victims that are sort of like not actually named, but they are given numbers throughout the court documents. So at this point, they had also had some of their personal details compromised. So here we have, Lukashev, so using that same account for the URL shortener, so also using it, so they're sending out, again, just like numerous phishing emails that are connected with the Clinton campaign and including victims 1 and 2. So the actual email account is from Yandex, but they are spoofing it to appear like it's coming from Google. So we have another person, so victim 1, so it has the username and password compromised at this point. And the emails of victim 1 are then given to a reporter later that we'll see. Now, I call out that these people are getting their accounts compromised because it just sort of shows you sort of at the cadence that this is occurring and sort of how regular it is. Okay, so March 28. So at this point, so both 26165 and 74455, they sit down together and they start planning. We've now got access to all this information. How are we going to release it? We've got access from the Clinton campaign. We've got access from the DCCC and the DNC. What are we actually going to start doing about it? Okay, so April 6th, so we've got Department A of 6165, so creating an email account in the name, which has, in the name of a known member of the Clinton campaign, and just has a 1-letter deviation. So again, so we've got like emails that are appearing to come from Google, emails that just have a 1-letter deviation. This is not like, this is not very technical hacking, but this is just the basics and it is working for them. So they sent out a number of spear phishing emails to more than 30 different Clinton campaign employees with this email that is appearing to come from someone connected to the Clinton campaign. So they basically sent around a document that has an embedded link, and the document was called Hillary Clinton Favorable Ratings. So it's just about polling. So this link directs recipients to a GRU-created website to harvest credentials. So one of these emails was received by the DCCC employee 1, who basically input their credentials into this credential harvesting form somewhere between April 6th and April 12th. So April 7, again, just running a technical query for the DCCC's internet protocol configurations, just to sort of see what connected devices there are. So just doing their basic reconnaissance here. April 12th. Okay, so Department A, they used stolen credentials of DCCC employee 1 to access the DCCC network. So they've sort of moved from the DNC network to the DCCC network. So they install and manage some different types of malware. Primarily Xagent is the one that we're going to talk about. It's also called Chopstick, if you are familiar with the MITRE attack information around Xagent. So Malishev and members of Department B of 6165. So they sort of handle the malware. So they will basically sort of like monitor the malware, and the AMS, which is the admin management system. It's basically just a panel that they're using to capture data from victims' computers. So the AMS panel also ends up, over the course of all this, it ends up collecting like thousands of keylogs and screenshots from DCCC and DNC computers. So it captures stuff as DCCC employee 2's viewing of the DCCC's online banking information. So they have access to quite a lot of stuff here. And we've also got another person here. So victim 4 also has their account for the DCCC network compromised at this point. So April 14, so we've got Department B of 6165. So they're basically using Xagent, they're capturing keylogs, so they're taking screenshots, and they're basically surveilling DCCC employee 1's computer just over the course of 8 hours. So I guess like just kind of imagine being at work and have someone watching what you're doing for the full 8 hours that you're there. So it covers like their communications with coworkers, the passwords that they're entering in while they're working around fundraising and voter outreach. Like it ends up sort of just covering like quite a lot. So at this point, so the next day, so April 15th, so 6165, so they are now searching for things that they're using keywords like Hillary, Cruz, who was also running in the campaign at this point, and Trump. So they are basically looking for just stuff from all the information they have access to that might be useful to them. So 26165, so they copy select DCCC folders, including a folder that was named in Benghazi investigations. So Benghazi was a scandal for when Clinton was Secretary of State. So they're just gathering dirt here. So again, 6165, so just targeting computers containing information such as opposition research and then field operation plans. So just, again, further dirt and just sort of seeing so how the actual campaign is going to be run. And then we have another person having their account, their details compromised. So April 16, so we've got Department B of 6165, so using the malware here, so they've activated Xagent keylog agent, basically just using the malware, and they get the credentials of a DCCC employee who has access to both the DNC network. So they've got access from one to the other, back from one to the other, like they're trying to make sure that they just have access all over the place. So 6165, so they hack into the DNC's network from the DCCC network using stolen credentials at this point. So 26165, so they've installed and managed different types of malware to explore this network. And again, so we got someone here, so victim 6 has their account compromised. So we've gone from like the chairman's emails, which was quite a lot of emails, to the DCCC network, now the DNC network. So they've got access to quite a lot of stuff. So this is roughly as far as like what the connections are looking like. So April 19, so we have Kozachek, Yershov, members of Department B from 6165. So they're remotely configured an overseas computer to relay communications between X-Agent and the AMS panel. So this is what they call this middle server. So it's basically a proxy. So the idea is, so we have connections into the DCCC network, we have connections into the DNC network. We've got implants for X-Agent across both networks. So when defenders come looking, which they do, you'll have connections out from those networks. So you'll see the IP addresses that these connections are going out to. And so rather than connect straight to the AMS panel that will give the defenders the IP address of the AMS panel, they set up this middle server such that you just see the IP address of this middle server. You would need to then basically get access to the middle server to then figure out what the IP address of the AMS panel is. It's just a way of obfuscating what they're doing. Okay, so April 19, 2016. Okay, so after attempting to register the domain election leaks, which they were not able to get, so 74455, they've registered the domain DC leaks through a service that anonymizes the registrant. And the funds that are used to pay for that registration, so it comes from that same Bitcoin wallet that we saw earlier. So the address is sort of split between both units, and they're using it to sort of like pay for various things. We have this particular email account here, and it's used to register this URL shortening account that is seen earlier in some of the phishing that we're using. So it's sort of just tying as far as like, we know this email address is connected to them. We know this email address was used to register this account. We know this account was used in the phishing. So it just sort of like in these court documents just ties all of this together, that it is coming back to these two units. April 20, so we have Department B of 6165. So again, using X-Agent, and they're connected to the middle server to receive directions. Okay, so April 22. So they set up a dump site, and we don't know, the court documents don't talk about the connections to the dump site. So we don't know if the connections are straight out from the networks, if the connections are out from the middle server, if they're out from the AMS panel. And we don't know how the GRU is connecting into it either. But so we have Department B, so they've again activated X-Agent, and they're taking screenshots. So they're basically capturing discussions of DCCC employee 2 about the DCCC's finances, as well as her individual, her sort of personal, like banking information and other personal topics. So a lot of personal stuff is sort of captured in a lot of this as well. So they've got quite a lot of data, and they, including opposition research, and they start looking to exfiltrate this out. And it's worth understanding. So there's a GRU leased computer located in Illinois that is sort of talked about in the court documents as well. So it's believed that that computer is the dump site that people are basically like taking this information and putting it in. Okay, so April 28. So at this point, so Department B is connected in and tested at the computer located in Illinois. So just making sure that everything is all working on their side. So just using XML to just continue to steal more information from the DCCC network. And then we have the remaining funds from that particular Bitcoin address. So it's now used to purchase a VPN account. Sorry, it was used to purchase a VPN account back in March. Now it is used to purchase a Malaysian server that's going to host the DC Leaks website. Okay, at some point in May, the indictment does not talk about exactly when, but at some point in May, the DCCC and the DNC, they become aware that they've been hacked, and we don't know how they become aware. So someone has seen something awry, and at this point, they call in Company 1 to help them with incident response, and we know Company 1 is CrowdStrike. So we have May 10. So victim 7 has a username and password to the DNC network compromised. And May 13, so at this point, so Unit 6165, so they start clearing event logs from the DNC computer to hamper CrowdStrike's investigations. So by May 13, the GRU understand that someone is aware of them and someone is performing incident response. They start taking active measures to hamper this incident response. So at this point, they're like, they know we're here, but they haven't got rid of us. So we're going to keep stealing, and we're going to make whoever knows about us, their life as difficult as possible. Okay, so from now until June 1, so 6165, so they've hacked the DNC Microsoft Exchange server. So they've now sort of into sort of the direct server that is housing on the emails, and they're stealing thousands of emails from the work accounts of DNC employees. This is while incident response is going on, so they are still stealing while people are trying to stop them doing this. And at this point, so we have Yermakov, he's searching PowerShell commands related to how to actually manage the Exchange server, which I think is a nice little point as far as hackers, they don't know everything off the bat, and sometimes they got to go do some reading. Sometimes you get access to a server and you're like, I don't know how to manage the server. And you got to read up and figure out actually how to do it. So May 30, so Militia have accessed the AMS panel that is connected to XAgent to basically upgrade the software. So they're rolling out upgrades to their malware while incident response is occurring. So it's receiving updates, and they're getting updates from, oh, sorry. So they're getting updates from approximately like 13 different XAgent malware implants that are across both the DNC and the DCCC network. So we don't sort of understand sort of like as far as like what their spread is at any one given time, but we know that at this point they're getting 13 like different computers that are calling back to them, and that is basically sort of like giving them information, and that's across sort of these two different networks. So May 31st, so Yermakov, so search for open source information about CrowdStrike, and it's reporting on XAgent and XTunnel. So at this point, they know that CrowdStrike is investigating them, and they start looking at what CrowdStrike is publishing to see what CrowdStrike knows about their malware. So it is quite interesting doing incident response where the adversary is watching you and what you are publishing about them. Okay, so at some point in June, we don't know exactly when, so Kovalev and members of 74455, so they're researching domains used by the US State Board of Elections, secretaries of state, and other election-related entities for website vulnerabilities. So we have the hacking of sort of the like political elements as far as the DCCC and the DNC. They now start going after the election infrastructure, seeing if there's anything around the State Board of Elections and that kind of stuff that they can get into. So June 1st, so we have 6165. So they're attempting to delete traces of their presence on the DCCC network, and they're using a software called CCleaner. So again, they are trying to just make the incident response as hard as possible and to cover up their tracks. And if you ever had any questions about does CCleaner actually work, CCleaner is used by Russian intelligence. So they at least think that it works. So June 2nd, so we have victim 2 having their username and password compromised at this point. Okay, so June 8, so unit 74455, so they use that Malaysian server that they purchased a little while back, and so they now publicly launched the website dcleaks.com. So they falsely claim that the site is started by a group of American hacktivists. So they try to make this look like it is a grassroots campaign sort of against the Democrats. They create a DC Leaks Facebook page, and they use the name Alice Donovan to do that, trying to appear American. And they create some other social media accounts with some fictitious personas such as Jason Scott and Richard Gingrey that are promoting the DC Leaks website. Okay, so this is still June 8th. There's quite a lot here. So they also create their Twitter account. So for DC Leaks, they also create this Baltimore is Where account. And they, through this particular account, so they encourage their now US audience to join their flash mob, in their words, to oppose Clinton. And they post images with the hashtag Blacks Against Hillary. 74455, so they're also accessing all these accounts from computers that are managed by Department 1, that's led by Potemkin. So they basically sort of have like part of their unit that's just dedicated to the infrastructure of what they are doing. So June 14th. Okay, so now at this point, so CrowdStrike puts out a statement. So on behalf of the DNC. So this is the DNC now formally coming out to publicly announce that they've been hacked by the Russian government. So CrowdStrike is pretty confident in their attribution. So they come out with a very sort of clear statement initially. Also the same day, so both 26165 and 74455, so they register this domain actblues.com, which mimics the official domain, which is actblue.com, and this is for funding. They also modify the DCCC website to direct to ActBlues rather than ActBlue. So they actually sort of changed one of the websites to redirect it to a fake funding portal. Okay, so June 15th. So here we have so people within 74455. So literally sort of between these times, a Moscow-based server between 4:19 and 4:46 p.m. Moscow Standard Time. They're public servants. They don't really work after 5. So they're searching for certain words and phrases. So we literally just have the search history of from this particular computer. And so it's worth knowing that, so we're going to see some of these phrases on the next slide. So some of the search terms include some 100 sheets, some hundreds of sheets, DC leaks, Illuminati, widely known translation, worldwide known, think twice about, and company's competence. It seems like they're just checking their English. That seems to be what they are doing here. Okay, so here we go. So it actually is late for public servants now. So 7:02 Moscow Standard Time. So the online persona for Galcifer 2.0, so this is a Twitter account that they've set up. So it publishes its first post on a blog site that's created through WordPress. So it's entitled DNC server hacked by lone hacker, and then they post a statement with quite a few of those phrases that we saw being searched earlier that day. And so we've got Galcifer 2.0. They claim to be a lone wolf hacker from Romania, not Russian, and not a team of intelligence operatives. So that statement that they put out, so it says, worldwide known cybersecurity company CrowdStrike announced that the Democratic National Committee servers had been hacked by sophisticated hacker groups. I'm very pleased the company appreciates my skills so highly. Here are just a few docs from many thousands I extracted when hacking into DNC's network. Some 100 sheets. This is a serious case, isn't it? I guess CrowdStrike's customers should think twice about company's competence. Fuck the Illuminati and their conspiracies. Fuck CrowdStrike. So we put the emphasis here on some of the phrases that were searched earlier on that day. And so this is just basically an attempt to muddy the waters. And they deliberately start using this word Illuminati, which we'll see later on as well. Okay, so June 20. So at this point, so CrowdStrike's disabled X-Agent on the DCCC network. So Unit 26165, so they end up spending over 7 hours trying to connect to it. And they're also trying to get access to the DCCC network using previously stolen credentials. So they've still got access to the DNC network, though. And so basically we've still got X-Agent there, and that is still there at least until October of 2016. So 6165, so they've now deleting logs from the AMS panel. So this I think is interesting as far as they set up the middle server to start obscuring what they were doing, but they did set it up late. They didn't initially have it there. There were connections to the AMS panel earlier on in the piece. At this point, they realize people are probably going to get into the AMS panel. It's also worth knowing that it's illegal to do this. So if you don't have access to a computer, like if you don't own that computer and you don't have rights to access it, it's illegal to get into it. So it's illegal for anyone to access that middle server and that AMS panel. But they figure that someone's not going to care about that, and someone is going to come and start gathering information. So they start wiping information from the AMS panel. They figure out it's probably going to get compromised if it hasn't been already. Okay, so at this point, so we've got June 22nd. So WikiLeaks, which is referred to as Organization 1 in the indictment, they start communicating with the Galcifer 2.0 persona on Twitter. So they start saying, so sending new material that you've got here for us to review. It'll have a much higher impact than what than what you were doing. So WikiLeaks is saying, please send us stuff, which is worth noting as far as WikiLeaks is encouraging like stuff to be leaked to it. Now, a lot of these organizations that sort of like deal in leaked documents, they usually say, look, we don't encourage people to do this. Like, we just get given stuff. But here, we actually have them basically inciting this to be done. Okay, so June 27th, so 74455, posing as this Galcifer 2.0 persona, they contact a US reporter with an offer to provide stolen emails from Hillary Clinton's staff. They then send the reporter a password to access a non-public password protected portion of the DC Leaks website. So they're sort of using it to sort of host all of this information. Contains emails from victim 1, stolen by Lukashev, Yermakov, and members of 6165. And so it's worth noting as far as like, so 74455 is doing this, but the information was stolen by 26165. So these two units are working together in this sense. It's also worth noting that, so just to jump back, this information was stolen back in March. They now start giving it in June. So there is like quite a period of time in between all that. So at some point in July, so Kovalev and members of 74455, so they hacked the website of SBOE1, which we believe to be the Illinois State Board of Elections. We don't know that to be as firmly as we do know that like CrowdStrike and WikiLeaks are related, but it's widely believed that Illinois State Board of Election is the State Board of Elections that is talked about. So they steal information from approximately 500,000 voters, but that information includes like names, addresses, partial social security numbers, dates of birth, and driver's license numbers. So quite a lot of information that you could use for identity fraud there. But it seems like their main objective here is to basically call the infrastructure of the election into question, just because they just want all of this chaos effectively around the elections, as we'll see sort of later on. So July 6th, so WikiLeaks, they come back to Galcifer and they say, if you have anything Hillary related, we want it in the next 2 days. So again, they are inciting information to be sent to them. And they even give a reason why they want it. So they're saying, because the DNC, so the Democratic National Convention, so not the committee now, this is the convention, this is an event that the Democratic Party holds, is approaching, and she will solidify Bernie supporters behind her afterwards. So 74455, they respond and they say, okay, I see. So at this point, so now they're actually now talking back and forth. So WikiLeaks goes on further to explain. So we think Trump only has a 25% chance of winning against Hillary. So conflict between Bernie and Hillary is interesting. WikiLeaks is basically putting their flag in the sand here, and they are saying that they want to cause problems in the election, which again, these bodies that handle leaked documents, they claim to be impartial. They claim that they have, like, they just report information given to them. WikiLeaks is publicly stating, sorry, not publicly stating, but they are stating to this person on Twitter, so that they think it's in a private communication, but they are making a clear declaration that they want to start interfering in this, and they're going to start releasing information, which we'll sort of see later on. So at this point, so victim 8's username and password is also compromised. Okay, so July 14, so 74455, again posing as Galcifer on Twitter. So they send an email to WikiLeaks with this attachment, and WikiLeaks is then able to get this encrypted file, which contains instructions on how to access the online archive that's hosted on the DCLeaks website. So it takes them a couple of days to do it, but 4 days later, so on July 18, WikiLeaks writes back and confirms that they've got access to the information, and they're going to release it this week. Okay, so July 22nd. So WikiLeaks releases over 20,000 emails and other documents are stolen from the DNC network. So when I initially gave this talk, this information was still up on the WikiLeaks website. I haven't checked it recently. It may still be up there. So if you want, you can actually sort of just go through that. So the release occurred approximately 3 days before the start of the Democratic National Convention. So they deliberately timed it to be right before the convention. So the convention is going to sort of be marred by all this stuff. And WikiLeaks didn't sort of disclose where they got it from. So the latest email is marked about May 25, which we then know that that's when 6465 got access to the Exchange server. So that's where the emails have come from. Forgive me, I've just seen the note. We're probably going to run out of time. I'll try to get through this as quickly as I can. So at this point, so 6165, they're still attempting spear phishing. So they're going after a third-party provider that's used by Clinton's personal office. And they're also targeting about 76 email addresses related to the Clinton campaign themselves, so it's continuing to phish. So at some point in August, so 74455, so they've got access to vendor 1, which is believed to be VR systems. So they're now in a vendor that has sort of like is selling software for the US elections. So 74455, again, sort of posing as Galcifer. So they now receive a request for documents from a candidate for the US Congress. So someone running for Congress reaches out to this unknown person on Twitter and says, give me a bunch of documents on my opponent, my political opponent who I'm running against. And they did. So that information is handed over. They also start writing to a member related to Trump at this point. So this person is believed to be Roger Stone. It's not confirmed, but Roger Stone has sort of come out and said that he believes it's him. And so they're saying, like, hey, is there anything interesting in his documents? They reply again on the 17th and saying, hey, please let me know if I can help in any way. So this is 74455. Very much trying to keep this contact with Roger Stone going and trying to sort of keep that relationship up. So again, posing as Galcifer, so they start transferring approximately 2.5 gigabytes of data, which is stolen from the DCCC, to a then registered state lobbyist and online source of political news. So basically they are sort of giving out this information to various people. It's believed this person is Aaron Nevins, so they're a political consultant, and they published information on the DCCC. They also send information to a reporter that pertains to the Black Lives Matter movement that's been gathered across all this information stealing. The reporter then comes back and starts discussing when to release the documents and offering to write an article. Again, reporters are supposed to be impartial. Reporters are just supposed to report what is like the news. Here we have a reporter discussing with Russian intelligence, when should I release these documents, and offering to write a story about it. So at some point in September, so 26165, so successfully gained access to the DNC computers hosted by on a third-party cloud computing service. So basically what they do here is they just take snapshots of the different sort of machines within this cloud environment. They transfer those snapshots to a different account registered with that same cloud provider. And they basically sort of just steal the entire cloud setup that way. So rather than steal individual documents and steal emails, they just steal the entire environment and just take it that way. So September 9, so 74455. So again, so referring to stolen DCCC documents, talking to Roger Stone. So they're saying like, hey, like, what do you think of all this information? Roger Stone come back and saying pretty standard. To be fair, at no point in the indictment does it feel like Roger Stone is actually sort of engaging with them in a way that is collusion, which is, I think, is kind of like key to how all this ends up playing out. But Roger Stone is talking to them. So at some point in October, so 26165 is now evicted from the DNC network. So it's unknown about the DCCC network, but we do know that CrowdStrike was able to get X-Agent off the DCCC network much earlier. So that was June 20th. So we feel at this point, like, this is pretty much where everyone gets evicted. So probably APT29, as well as like Fancy Bear, 26165 is now out of both the DNC and the DCCC network. At this point, so October 7, so WikiLeaks starts releasing the first set of emails from the chairman of the Clinton campaign. That was stolen like way back at the beginning. That was the first information that they got access to. It's only now entering the public domain here. And this is the same day that the Access Hollywood tape is published. So basically, this recording that you would have thought would have sunk the presidential campaign here, given how heinous it is as far as what Trump is talking about. That exact same day, WikiLeaks starts releasing all of these emails. So basically it just starts to split the conversation as far as we've got the 24-hour news cycle. Now, rather than just have one scandal that they can focus on, they've got two. So the airtime for the Hollywood Hackers tape is basically halved, and it's halved by WikiLeaks. And it's halved given the fact that WikiLeaks was given things from Russian intelligence. So October 28th, so Kovalev and members of 74455, so they're visiting websites for counties in Georgia, Iowa, and Florida. They're looking for vulnerabilities. They're just trying to see what they can get access to as far as the election infrastructure itself. Okay, so at some point in November, so prior to November 8th, so they've used email accounts that are designed to look like they've come from VR systems who they had access to earlier, and they start sending out spear phishing emails. We don't know if this actually got them anywhere, but they're still trying right up until the wire. And November 8th is when the election is held. Okay, so the election is held, so we know that Trump goes on to win this. So next year, so January 12th, so Unit 74455, posing as Galcifer, they put out statements saying that there's totally no relation to the Russian government between like what I'm doing. Like there's absolutely no relation to Russia at all, none whatsoever, nothing to see here. At some point in March, the DC of the Week's website is shut down, but it received over 1 million page views before it was shut down. Okay, sorry, that was a lot. I do think it's important to sort of go through sort of the minutiae of some of this, just to sort of give you a feel for sort of how all this plays out. I will quickly try to do some meaning making so that we can try to not be too far over time. Okay, so this is very low tech but high operational sophistication. So what these units are doing, so they are phishing to get access to things. They have a keylogger, which is pretty simple malware. They're capturing credentials so they can start moving laterally. They transfer files over a VPN. So they use this malware called X-Agent and X-Tunnel. It's kind of basic stuff, but the phishing never stops. Like you'll see as we were going, it was always, oh, and this person had their accounts compromised on this date. Oh, and this person also had stuff compromised. So it just continually kept going. There were multiple machines at any given time, so we know there were at least up to 13 at one time, and we know there was 33 access that were in total. They moved from the DCCC network into the DNC network. They were monitored by CrowdStrike, and they just kept going. And they were deleting evidence as they were going once they realized they had someone that was basically doing instant response against them. And like personal information is captured in a lot of this stuff. There's like just personal stuff as far as people going about the day-to-day at work that's captured. And it's worth noting that threat actors will look you up on social media if they are so inclined. So attackers have bosses and budgets too. This is worth understanding, as far as the realities of some of this. If you're an attacker, like we sometimes think of attackers as sort of like these omnipotent beings, but there's like stuff you have to do. Like you've got to register domains, you've got to buy servers, you've got to have VPN accounts, you've got to set up social media accounts, you've got to have these websites so that you can harvest credentials. You've got to build a lot of this stuff or pay for it and buy it. You need to maintain it, set it all up. The purchases are done through cryptocurrency, so they're trying to obscure how they are doing all this stuff. And you got to clean up your infrastructure too if you think someone's going to come after you. So they start deleting logs at various points. So the phishing, like all it is address spoofing, so appearing like it's coming from Google when it's not, registering a one-letter difference to a person's name, so it looks like it's coming from someone it's not. So just putting links in emails, using a URL shortener to hide the URLs that's coming from. Content like please change your password or please log in to view the contents. Like this is really, really basic stuff, but it does work. It's worth knowing. So this basic stuff is used by like Russian intelligence. The takeaways for me are like you do your basics well and you never stop. Like that is sort of the key to sort of how all this ends up playing out. Now, what does this mean for disinformation? Okay, so I've basically done a bit of an analysis and sort of mapped some of this to disarm. This is not a thorough analysis. This is just some of the highlights. Okay, so TIO2, plan your objectives. So degrading your adversary. So they want to degrade Clinton's campaign. That's clearly what they're trying to do here. Distort. So they use Galcifer 2.0, claiming to be Romanian, not Russian. They use the term Illuminati, which is this term used in conspiracy theories. So that gets attached to the Clinton campaign, and like conspiracy theories sort of start wrapping up around that. You have distraction, so distract away from Trump. So when the Hollywood Access tape comes out, all of a sudden we have new scandals that come out so that the airtime is halved around that. Talk about Benghazi. This was a Clinton scandal. Talk about this email server, Clinton using this email server. Don't talk about Trump. Distract away from Trump. And this creating polarization, so dividing. Polarization is a national security issue. Like I think that is like worth taking away. Like I wish that agencies would look at this more as an actual issue. Okay, TA13, so target audience analysis. Okay, so geographic segmentation. So they use information about sort of the geographies of the US, so that you have this Baltimore is everywhere account. Demographic segmentation, blacks against Hillary, they deliberately sort of like use this hashtag. Political segmentation, so Democratic donor information that's being given to a Republican consultant so he can publish it. Like they know who to give information to. So 74455, who was responsible for giving out this information, they never leaked everything to one person. They parcel it out to various people that is tailored to the audience that person has and how that person is going to report it. So you have established social assets, so creating inauthentic social media pages and groups. So they created this Facebook page for these supposed American hacktivists. Cultivating ignorant agents. So you have WikiLeaks who cultivate themselves and approach Galcifer on Twitter, but you have journalists, you have Roger Stone, you have political consultants, all of these people are being used. You creating inauthentic websites, so they create the DC Leaks website, creating sock puppet accounts, which is why we sort of have these puppets in some of the images here. So Galcifer 2.0 is their primary account that they're using for that. Now, maximizing exposure, so flooding the information space. So they release information through WikiLeaks from October onwards. The election is November 9th, is in November, so November 8th. And so they just release information, just carpet bombing the airwaves all through right up until the election. Persist in the information environment, so playing the long game. So they leak information all through the year before they sort of hit that intense period in October, but they're constantly putting out scandals as they are going. Concealing their operational activity so they can keep going longer, so paying with Bitcoin, using VPNs, this kind of stuff. Okay, so takeaways. low technical, but with operational sophistication. So they know what they are doing. Like their operations are continuing like at all times, no matter what is going on. There are constantly negative stories about Clinton in the information space. So the press always have something to latch on to about Clinton. The source of the negative stories is obfuscated, so it's not seeming like it's coming from Russian intelligence. It's coming from WikiLeaks. It's coming from journalists. This looks like just stuff to do with the campaign, not a foreign adversary running an information operation. This is all very much by design. You can't say that this actually swung the election, but what we can say is a foreign adversary was able to fuel the 24-hour election cycle for months. Now, these issues dogged the subsequent presidency, and they still do to this day. We still talk about Russian collusion, now into Trump's second presidency. It increased polarization, which lowers the effectiveness of democracy. And it's a statecraft for authoritarian regimes. Like, these tools are cheap. And if you do your basics well, these very cheap tools can be very, very effective. Okay, I've got a ton of references for putting this all together. Obviously not going to go through these, but you can look at these if you would so like. Okay, I apologize for running over. We can go into questions and answers if people would like. I'm also going to stop sharing, so I will pass it back there.
Awesome. Thank you, Cade. So yeah, we're just going to end out now. If Sunil, thanks for sticking with us. We appreciate you being here. Do you have any questions or has anything come up? I know we covered a lot, and I think the takeaways are like really interesting, and the part about just like it's simple things done well that is like a big part of the hacking. So let's see, I'll pause a moment in case you have a question, Sunil, but if not, we'll move forward. And just some final announcements. As always, share your feedback. There's a link in the chat and also in the follow-up link. Next week, we have our onboarding. Janine's going to be out, but it will be Kate and myself. And as always, you can continue the conversation in Slack if there's any interesting things you've learned from this presentation or things you want to, I guess, learn more about in the future. Feel free to, chat with us, share articles, share links. And I'd like to learn more about Project Earth that you were talking about as well. And that's kind of all we have for now. Thanks for joining us. The recording will be up and we'll be sharing the slides and presentation. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now.